Hello, I'm Russell Brand. This is True News. A different type of politics has emerged in Greece. Has capitalism finally crumbled? Let's find out.
Supporters of Greece's radical left party waited, daring to believe this was their moment.
I would even question terms like radical left. What I think this is a new type of political movement that emerges when the population is galvanised, when people have finally had enough with corruption, systemic inefficiency, and oligarchical domination and corruption. When people finally come together, they get politically represented.
This was history. The party Syriza had won a decisive victory on a platform of opposition to austerity and budget cuts. Tonight, Alexis Tsipras, the leader of the radical left party Syriza, went to his headquarters.
What's interesting to me about what's happening, firstly, pronouncing everything's hard, isn't it? Tsipras, that's his name, Tsipras. Syriza sounds too much like Chorifo, but we're just going to have to get our heads around that. What's interesting to me is that this is, as Paul Mason said in his Guardian column, an emergence of a youthful generation of professionals that's had enough of tax-evading oligarchs.
Many of Europe's leaders had warned against voting for him, fearing his promise to renegotiate Greece's bailout agreement.
Η Ελλάδα αφήνει πίσω της.
With this, Greece turns the page, leaves behind the poverty of catastrophe.
They could have got a better person to do his translation, couldn't they? He does look like a charismatic leader. With this, Greece has started a bloody new era.
Leaves behind the fear, leaves 5 years of humiliation.
Greece is the word, it's the word that you've heard. It's got groove, it's got feelings.
Earlier today, Alexis Tsipras had cast his vote. He had understood that his country had grown weary of economic collapse and 5 years of recession. When I spoke to him,
we get on really well, him hassling him in a crowd.
He was clear this was an election about austerity.
Me and Alexis are quite close, actually. He's my best mate. Alexis! I got this for you! Oh, actually, he always does that. It's a thing we do.
What's your message for Europe today?
How are you feeling today?
The vicious circle of austerity is over. This is the message.
The vicious circle of austerity is over, was his message.
To me, I think that he was trying to say it to me directly, as a pal.
His opponent was the Conservative Prime Minister Antonis Samaras. He had the support of most of Europe's leaders.
Did his vote, did a little pat, nice. Let me vote now. Shit. Did you see some of the leaders that support that Samaras guy, like our David Cameron, saying, this is a sad day for Greece. Like, well, not really Greece, more me, actually. This is a sad day for me because people are finally realising there is an alternative to being completely dominated by a corporate oligarchy living under the sweltering weight of imaginary debts, because what this party have said is, we ain't paying them debts. Alright, well, we'll kick you out of the EU then. Good, seeing as how it's all pretend and not helping.
Not since the 1930s has a true far-left party been in power in a European democracy. They will walk into the Eurogroup, the European Council, NATO, all the bodies dealing with that Ukrainian crisis, with ministers who don't believe that capitalism is good, and indeed who believe that the West is imperialist.
That's pretty amazing, so I suppose that's what they mean by far left, anti-capitalist. Well, let's all get down with that. For us, that's exciting. For the Trews and for what we've been talking about, that we need a genuine alternative, this is fascinating. Could anything like that happen in Britain? Well, in Greece, they have a proportional representation system, a mixed proportional representation system. 250 out of 300 total seats are distributed proportionally between all the parties that reach 3% of the nationwide electoral threshold. Right, so once you've got over 3%, then you get proportional representation. The remaining 50 seats after the 250 are given as a bonus to the party that has the most votes, providing an exciting quiz show element to democracy. Who wants to be a Greek dictator? Okay, you've got the most seats. Would you like to play for the extra 50 bonus seats? Yeah, I'd like to play for them. Okay, you've got the 50 bonus seats. Would you like to play an extra round to become a dominant dictator? I'm just gonna stick with democracy, Chris. Okay, they're sticking with democracy. So could we have that in Britain? Are there parties in Britain that, like Paul Mason there just said, would be prepared to go into NATO negotiations and say, we don't believe in capitalism? Is it possible that any British party that did believe in those things could get significant representation with a first past the post system? Is that possible? Is that likely? Or is it likely that what you'll get is a party like the Lib Dems in the coalition as a sort of make-weight to either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, both parties which we know are pro-austerity?
In this city, every bank on every high street is propped up effectively by emergency assistance from the European Central Bank. Syriza says it will do a calm negotiation over rescheduling this country's debt, but it will cancel the conditions the European Central Bank has set for this economy.
That's what's exciting, is that they're going to cancel conditions set by the EU. That's sort of, I mean, I don't really fully know what that means, except that they're going to confront a great big bureaucratic administrative body and go, we ain't paying that debt. So to a degree, the EU, I suppose, must represent the interests of corporate elites. Leaders across Europe are sort of baffled. We've talked about David Cameron's reaction, but no one's that happy about it. For the first time, power has been handed to populist outsiders deeply opposed to Brussels, Berlin, albeit not anti-European. So this is not a UKIP situation. Why this is exciting for us, people of Britain, people of the world, is Syriza represents positive new values of self-reliance, creativity, the willingness to treat life as a social experiment with a global outlook, says Paul Mason. The reason I'm excited by this is because Syriza are approaching capitalism from a completely different perspective. Also, the voters of Greece have had the chance to vote for a party that represents people, but not from some crazy right-wing perspective. Although the old neo-Nazis got a bit of the vote, overwhelmingly this is a victory for tolerance and compassion.
So the Greek voters have sent a message. They don't believe that austerity has worked, and so they've backed a candidate who has promised to renegotiate the bailout deal, and from tomorrow to start ending austerity and also to try and write down the debt.
What this is a strong rejection of the dominant values of our time, of corporatism, oligarchy, the breakdown of society, ending of public institutions and common ownership. This is a rejection of that on a massive level by the people of Greece. It's a rejection of cronyism and corruption. That feeling that we all have of like, oh, what's the point in politics? What's the point? They're not doing anything for us. That is definitely something that's contributed to this enormous victory in Greece. Let's learn a little bit more about Syriza's actual policies. It says they're going to raise the national minimum wage. They're going to prevent people's primary place of residence being repossessed. In terms of their foreign policy, Syriza fights for a multi-dimensional pro-peace foreign policy for Greece. Multi-dimensional, I like. We're going into a new dimension where everyone is one. We're just a common vibration together. That's going to be hard to implement, multi-dimensional policies. Peaceful cooperation, particularly with neighbouring countries. Syriza denounces the dominant, extreme, neoliberal and Euro-Atlantic policies that currently our governments embrace.
The walls of Athens tell a story of anger and loss of hope. The graffiti says what many people here are thinking: freedom to dream.
If we in our country had a party like Syriza, I would vote for it. I would urge you to vote for it. So I suppose what this is an opportunity for us to do is to bully, galvanise, push political powers into representing us properly.
The Greek establishment is about to learn that if you waste a whole generation, they tend to fall out of love with the system.
The kind of things that we should be aware of in our country are fast-tracking bills that allow fracking. That's happening now. That's something we need to be alert to. Selling arms to countries that are on our own human rights abusers lists. Giving tributes to dead leaders in Saudi Arabia that abuse human rights, that abuse freedom of speech at a time when we're talking about, hey, come on, man, I am Charlie, let's have freedom of speech. We need to close loopholes that lead to, in our country, 70 billion lost on corporate tax. People are bored and tired of this kind of corruption and cosy energy deals made with energy companies across the world that benefit political elites and not the people. So this victory in Greece for compassionate, people-motivated, inclusive politics could be a victory for all of us if we have the correct representation, but if we take back power for ourselves. That's some true news. Subscribe here, True news, true news.
Nose is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the nose. If the nose was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.